Welcome, welcome, Parissa, and welcome everybody who is with us now and or will be with us later. It is such a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while to have this conversation with you, Parissa. You, as a modern badass, are really a role model for me of audacity. And in the spirit of audacious conversations, I'd love to just go down that route and make this a playful and an audacious, inspiring conversation. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you. This is so much fun. I blocked off my entire morning. I'm currently in Chicago, so it's still morning here, and the morning was blocked off so that I can be present and available in spirit and in mind to have this conversation with you.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you. And absolutely, I forgot you're in Chicago. I'm in London. If anybody's here from London or from anywhere else in the world, it would be great to say hello to us, and we'll say hello back. But let's explore. I think, for me, you and I were talking about my own definition of audacity, and that is courage, care, and non-conformity. So those three pillars. Yeah. Which one is the one that resonates most with you? Which one will you choose?
Oh, if I were going to rank, oh my gosh, that's a good. I was about to answer. I'm just going to go with my gut answer because that's it. Courage, nonconformity, and care. But there's not huge deltas between the three. But the courage, nonconformity, and care.
Fabulous. And because you've got your own definition, obviously, I've got your book here, The Modern Badass, the Tales from the Leadership Front. So what is your definition of a badass? Because that's an audacious way of looking at the world.
Yeah. Badasses are pattern interrupters, change agents, disruptors. They are leaders and visionaries that go 80 miles an hour in a 45 mile an hour zone without checking to see if people are strapped in for the ride, let alone interested in the destination. Practical examples of badasses, Thomas Edison, Malala Yousafzai, Steve Jobs, Serena Williams, Beyonce. You don't have to like who these people are or what they've put out in the world. And you can still recognize the outsized impact on all of us. So imagine a world without a Steve Jobs. Well, would you even have a handheld phone if you're an Android fan, for example? What would the world look like without a Malala Yousafzai? What would the world look like without the light bulb, thanks to Thomas Edison? And so I'm a mission to be the world-renowned advisor and coach to these leaders and the leaders who lead these leaders. Mainly because it's not that I worry about the badasses that are known or identified. I worry about the ones that we will never meet because they were sidelined or silenced, either by the powers that be or they decided to play a smaller game. I worry about the opportunity costs. Like what future, Margaret Thatcher, for example, do we not meet? Regardless of her politics, what future Thatcher do we not meet because that person was silenced forever and we did not benefit from their energy, their passion, their drive, etc.
Fabulous. I mean, it is, and it's a similar and yet different definition of audacious people for me. But I think what we have got in common is this passion for working or advocating, shall I say, for the people who are being labeled as too much or maybe in themselves not enough. And that's, for me, this is what my book is also trying to explore in a way. It's the audacity of being courageous and caring at the same time, which is a paradox in itself. So what defines your badasses?
So, it's interesting. I think courageous and care live on the same side of the coin, right? It's not even two sides of the coin. Like courageous and care. You wouldn't embark on a courageous, audacious act if you didn't care. If you embarked on an act that seemed reckless without care attached to it, that is someone who is showboating. That is someone who is showing off. That is someone who is shiftless, aimless, has no goal whatsoever, does not have the betterment of society in mind. And so when I think about badasses, I've come up with 14 traits of badasses. One of them is that they go 80 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone. Another thing that's true about badasses is they're wildly creative. Uh,
Mm.
they lean into the spirit of play because they also have a growth mindset. They know that something beautiful always happens on the other side of an experiment, even when the experiment goes pear shaped, because that's information they never had before. And they say, okay, great, this one didn't work. Perhaps the next one will. Okay, this one worked. Now let's say yes and embark on whatever the next adventure is in service of whatever the larger goal is. They rely heavily on intuition. They are harder on themselves than they ever will be on anybody else.
Mm.
And this last piece, and I think it speaks beautifully to the care part of your definition, is that they are so desirous to be in community with other people. They don't always know how.
Mm.
The degree of sensitivity about these badasses across the board, across any of the badasses I coach or have coached, the degree of sensitivity um, is something to behold.
Mm. I love that. Thank you, Parissa. And actually, what you reminded me of is that the reason I have swapped the courage and care in my strap line of my book. So the Audacity Spectrum is leading with care, courage, and nonconformity. It was, I'm giving that credit to you from the conversation that you and I had in Cuomo, actually last summer. And I was, because originally I started with courage. For me, I always, think of myself as a courageous soul. If you ask anybody, what they will get at the end of a journey with me, they'll say, more courage. I give people courage. So I've
Right.
always had this um, story, I suppose, narrative that I am leading with courage, that what I'm most known for is courage, and also this huge belief that anything is possible. And yet you just brought that into my own consciousness at the time, that I actually lead with care before I lead with courage. And for me, it's always, you have to care so much about someone or something that you
Right.
then don't care about what other people think.
Exactly. And it takes a lot of intestinal fortitude
Mm.
to be that person. It is an active choice.
Mm.
One of the things that I've talked about on my own badass journey is I have said, don't treat it like it's a party trick. It's not something that I call up that and say, oh, I feel like badassing today, or oh, I feel like being polarizing today, or oh, wouldn't it be fun if I acted a contrarian today? It's more of the, I am so committed to a particular idea, and
Mm.
my intentions are clear. I'm clear about what the goal is. I'm clear about what the strategy is. I am going to call up all of the energy I possibly have to bring it to your attention. And it's, you can't do that without care. Like, how do I hold care for myself, knowing that there might be blowback from people that might not understand yet?
Mhm.
So care for the mission, care for myself, care for the people I serve. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to do that. And as I know, that's true. As
Mhm.
you embark on an act of courage, or as you invite people to step into what courage looks like for them, that is a degree of effort that I don't believe other people fully understand.
Mm. Totally. You're absolutely right. And in that way, for me, the word that comes to mind as you were just explaining it is this word of tenacity.
Yeah.
When you care about others, you care about your mission, you also need to make sure you care about yourself, because it's difficult. You could care too much about others at the expense of yourself, or the other way around, people who are very self-centered, and finding that balance is
Yeah.
probably one of the most difficult human endeavors, really.
Oh,
To really, it's almost, sometimes I do think it's elusive, because finding the balance between those three pillars, it's never easy, and yet I think that's what you and I and many people on this planet are trying to do, are set to do, to find that very elusive balance. But
absolutely.
so no, in absolutely, in terms of the for me, the tenacity is that extra. So I always think, when I was starting to think and write about the book, I always had this concept of the little extra, the which is a too muchness, I suppose, in your definition.
Mm,
People who are, maybe labeled as too emotional, as
mm.
too stubborn,
Too
too
brash, too bold, too
optimistic.
loud. Yes, all the
Yes,
two.
all the too muchness, which actually starts with a good intention. It's in
Right.
the positive intention, and then it can be, goes into the non-conformity, is where it goes. Is that boundary that sometimes we push the boundary, and we just have to stand up for what we believe in.
Absolutely. And this too muchness, I was called too much.
Mm.
I was called the hardest person ever to manage. So I have a degree of empathy for people, never sympathy. I have a degree of empathy for people who swim in this too muchness according to other people, as opposed to believing that they are too much. And the exploration which I think you and I have is, how do we have a conversation about exactly what we need, as opposed to calling it too much, too loud, too
Mhm.
bold, too brash, too colorful? How do we create a context that it's exactly what we need every single time an audacious person is sitting in the room? And some of that, it's a situation where lots of things can be true at the same time. Um, Audacious people, badasses, don't always share what their content and context look like,
Mhm.
and so they become harder to read.
Mhm.
That's a something that we can work on. And then the flip side that's true is that for the people who lead these types of people, they don't always have the tools
Mhm.
to know how to lead someone like this, regardless of where somebody is in an organization, senior level, C-suite, high potential, just enter the workforce. It really doesn't matter. We are lacking the tools to know how to lead someone audacious, so that the conversation never becomes, so the conversation goes from the too muchness to, how do I channel this person's awesome?
Mm.
How do I channel this person's power? And for people like us, the badasses, the audacious people out there, is, how do I deploy my power such that it fits the situation we are in?
Mhm.
There is a really funny cartoon from this. I want to say it was before I was born. Like, must be from the '60s, and it's this flying moose called Bullwinkle, or excuse me, a moose called Bullwinkle, and a flying squirrel called Rocky. And the running gag of the cartoons was that Bullwinkle always wanted to pull a rabbit out of a hat and impress his friend Rocky. And he would say, "Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of a hat." And every single time he pulled something else out of a hat, and he would say, "Oh, okay, I messed up." Then one of the gags, and it's hilarious, it's also in my book. One of the gags is, "Hey, Rocky, watch me pull this rabbit out of a hat." And Rocky says again, because he's so impatient and frustrated with this gag, that he says, "Look, nothing up my sleeve." And he says, "Presto." And instead of pulling a rabbit out of a hat, he pulls out this rhinoceros. And then Bullwinkle says, "Oh, I don't know my own strength." And that to me typifies what happens with people who are audacious. That happens with people who are badasses, is that we don't always know our own strengths. Do we need to be at 100%? Maybe 75% would suffice. How do we read the room that we're in? And then
Mm.
the flip side is, how do leaders help these people read the rooms that they are in?
Yeah, and the image that came, absolutely. I mean, it's such a lovely story to share, and but it is the image that you've just opened with is the 85, miles an hour in a 40-mile zone where they can go very fast
Yep.
and really not realizing that they are well ahead and everybody else is struggling to catch up with. Um,
Yeah, it's about an alignment of a goal. So we want audacious leaders to be audacious. I would never tell an audacious person to dial it down, right? I would never tell a badass to dial it down. What can we do to achieve clarity of what the purpose is? What can we do to achieve clarity on what our mission is, so that everyone knows how to show up in ways that other people say, "Oh, I'm so relieved this audacious leader is sitting at the table. This is the type of audaciousness our company has been looking for," or whatever it is that someone might say about an audacious leader that is serving so powerfully that everyone else just has this, "We're going to be okay," or "Everything is okay." How does that audacious leader show up as the pain reliever to the migraine that everyone is experiencing? And I know that you are so passionate about that.
Yeah, and when you were saying about not dialing down, actually, I sort of felt myself, am I now in disagreement with Parissa, which I love that moment. But because it's not about the dialing up and dialing down, although I do say to my leaders, sometimes you do need to be aware of who's around. And I sometimes, I'm guilty of that when I go too fast and not realizing that there are people who are well behind and I have to stop. That idea of, slowing down to speed up, that
For sure.
I found it incredibly difficult for me personally. And yes, there is, you just have to increase that awareness that sometimes we do have to, let's call it dial down or even dial up, depending on what it is and I'm reluctant to say conform, because it's not about conforming
Yeah, it's
to
not
others,
conforming.
but it's about, attuning is probably the word, attuning to others and attuning to the environment and to what it is that we're trying to achieve, which is a skill in itself, actually.
100%. It's never about conforming, it's about reading the room. So it's not dialing down so much as what is needed here.
Mhm.
What part of my power is needed here? And sometimes, and I'm curious to hear your point on this. Sometimes you don't have to be Wonder Woman. You can be Diana Prince. Sometimes you don't have to be Superman. You can be Clark Kent, because the other people around the table that you're sitting with, they are actually the superheroes that you need.
Mhm.
Be mortal. Let other people shine. There's such beauty in seeing other people's gifts, and that to me is the dialing down without diminishing your power.
Totally. And it's that principle of actually surrounding yourself with people who are, well, I suppose smarter is what some will say, but absolutely not being threatened by, but, on the contrary, really surrounding yourself with people that you learn from. And then, they'll have a different light. They'll shine different ways in what it is that we're trying to achieve. And you reminded me, I have started, it's a third person who's recommended this book. I've only just started, so I'm not into it, but you might have read it that sort of 10 times it's easier than 2 times, or 10x is easier than 2x.
Oh, I've heard about
Adam
this. I
Silver.
haven't read it yet.
Yeah, and it's the same, actually, that, if we do the 2x's, it's more or less what we've been doing. It, we're just going one step, but 10x, it looks so impossible, so audacious, that actually, in the big scheme of things, it becomes easier, because we go full in, into this. So absolutely, I've just started it, but it is the same type of principle. We were
Yeah.
talking.
And then, what's Rita shared a few minutes ago, care for oneself resonates because I've found I've lost myself in the care
For others.
for others. And
Mhm.
so this is where we learn how to this degree of power deployed.
Mhm.
It's because I'm caring for myself. So when you Diana Prince instead of Wonder Woman, it's a form of self-care. When you Clark Kent instead of Superman, it's a form of self-care. The degree of stress that audacious leaders put on themselves all the time, like I must be at the top of my class, I must be number one, I must. That degree of stress and pressure is not sustainable. And, is it 10x? Is it 2x? What feels better? How do we deploy our power in ways that not only serve other people, but also feels good here as well?
Yeah, and I know I sort of Sylvia's in the room. I just saw it is. It's not the power, as well as the energy that you've mentioned, quite a few times. It's how do we manage that energy? Actually, that's the key to everything. We always say it's not managing time; it's managing energy. And again, I think there was a great, I think a great quote that or a podcast I can't remember, maybe about a week ago, and it was lovely that talked about energy. It's what energy we have at any one time. The age is just a number, and it doesn't really matter. It's how do we manage the energy in that particular moment to achieve what it is that we are trying to achieve. And again, that's the mastery in itself, hey?
Yeah, and Sylvia actually just posted compassion is key to sustainable power
Yeah.
and compassion as energy. Um, it's compassion radiates a love for your fellow human, even if you don't like them. A love for your fellow human uh, radiates. Uh, I'm sure you've done this exercise too. You stand in front of someone and you look into their eyes for a couple of minutes in complete silence. It's how good are you at being present with someone else, but then
Mhm.
also recognizing what you're feeling as you're being present with someone else. And um, I have been in moments where I have decided to send love, support, care, and energy to the person across from me. And we're not saying any words. That person starts to cry.
Mhm.
So it's that compassion as an energy, care as an energy for ourselves and for other people. And then the desire to have goodwill,
Mhm.
the desire to support community, those energies radiate and elevate the dialogue and the unity 100%.
Absolutely, yes. And you and I mean, we did it. I can't remember. Was it Kurosawa with
It
as
was
part of
curious.
our own community in 4PC, and that's an incredibly powerful exercise to do, where you just deeply look into someone's eyes for 2 minutes without saying anything. It's looking deeply into their soul, and it just brings a lot of those emotions. But for you, your superpower, I know you lead a lot with empathy. You
Yes,
talk about that explicitly, and the model is all about that. So it's going into that power of compassion, and it's even if you don't, especially when you don't agree with someone. That's
exactly. Exactly. And that is as I age, and hopefully people will learn this before I learn this. But as I age, there is you don't have to like someone, and you can have compassion for them. You don't have to like someone, you can have empathy for them. And so, because I'm so in my corporate life, I always felt like people were sitting in judgment of me.
Mm.
Now, whether or not that's true, it's totally different. It was a perception I had at a time. And so, in the work that I do, is I don't ever want anyone to feel like I'm sitting with sympathy. It's I believe that you all have the tools you need to be successful. And so we are walking with this path together, shoulder to shoulder. Uh, and we are seeing the horizon up ahead against us. And we may make different choices depending on what we see in the horizon. I don't ever want anyone to feel like I am sitting in opposition to them.
Mm.
It's not helpful. It creates conflict. And what that does is that it makes it really easy for people to misunderstand each other. And I think empathy in conversation, empathy in business, empathy as one is creating business strategy, let alone whatever your leadership strategy is critical, necessary, and it's missing in a lot of conversations these days, I find.
Mm. And actually, again, talking about empathy, I'm sure you have read, and if not, it's one of the books. Is Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. So empathy it's the most important skill in any negotiations. He was the FBI hostage negotiator, but yeah, absolutely. Without empathy, you really, especially when it's life and death. But
Exactly.
I'm aware we're sort of 4 minutes away from the end. Parissa, I'd love to hear what is a very audacious or some audacious experimentation, as we talked about experiments, that's out there for you in the next 12 months or so.
Oh my gosh. This year, I am fully leaning in to the risk of toppling over, of building up the speaking portion of my platform. I'm so passionate about badasses that I have. I'm speaking to a private group at the end of this month about how to help people tap into
Mm-hmm.
their badassery if they believe that they are not badasses. And then in the middle of April, I'm speaking on a topic called the Steve Jobs You'll Never Meet. And yeah, I am letting the world know about my platform more and more and more, which is very scary to me. And at
Mm.
the same time, that's how I know it's the right and best place for me to be, because I find it very intimidating. And I'm doing it anyway.
Of course, you and I were sort of talking about it. It's you want to feel scared a little bit again,
Yep.
because that's outside of that.
I want to feel alive. The
Yeah.
fear, when I feel the fear of creating this speaking platform, it's I am feeling alive and aligned with the mission. So all of those things are true.
Of course. And so how could we find you? Is it, where do we find about these speaking gigs?
Oh, thank you for asking. So the best way people can find me, one of the best ways is on LinkedIn. We're on
Mhm,
LinkedIn
mhm.
now. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And then also my website, sixsensestrategy.com. I have a newsletter that I publish 2 times a month on LinkedIn. People can subscribe there. And if people are interested in taking my Modern Badass quiz, go to the top of my profile, and there's a link there that will take you to a quick quiz that will give you quick results at the same time.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be, like, if anyone is curious in the room, whether now or when you watch this later, just find out how much of a badass you are uh,
Absolutely.
within 5 minutes or so. That's fantastic. Well, thank you, Parissa. Thank you. I mean, actually, it's just having for us, the newsletter for sure, just subscribe to that and everything else. And for, we've got, so under Adapter, we've got our own authentic leadership newsletter that comes out once a month. And under my own, I've got the audacious leadership newsletter that comes out once a month. And I'm really looking forward to continuing having audacious conversations with you offline. And then
Likewise.
looking forward to having Sylvia on it's a special edition, on Adapter next week.
Oh, she's brilliant. That's going to be a wonderful conversation. I will make sure to tune in.
Thank you. So that's sort of taking care and compassion to an extra level altogether. Uh, but,
Absolutely.
but thank you. And then we're saying, to everybody, to reach out to you and to us at any time. And really thank you all for being here. And to you,
Absolutely. Thank you,
Parissa, for
everyone.
a wonderful, playful conversation.
Thank you. Be well, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.